Being stupid has nothing to do with your grades in school. It has nothing to do with your test scores. It has nothing to do with how many books you've read. Real stupidity is not about knowledge. Real stupidity is about behavior. You can meet someone with a university degree who acts foolishly every single day. And you can meet someone with very little education who thinks clearly, learns constantly, and makes wise decisions. So today, we are not talking about intelligence. We are talking about something more important. We are talking about patterns of thinking that quietly destroy a person's life, one bad decision at a time. Watch closely, because you might recognize one or two of these signs in your own life. And that's actually a good thing, because once you see a pattern clearly, you can finally change it. These are 6 signs of a stupid person. Not to judge others, but to check yourself honestly and grow. Let's begin. Sign 1. They think they already know everything. The first sign is simple. A stupid person believes they already know enough. This sounds strange at first. Shouldn't confidence be a good thing? Yes, confidence is good. But there is a big difference between confidence and closed-mindedness. A confident person says, "I know a lot, but I can still learn more." A closed-minded person says, "I already know this. I don't need to listen." This second type of thinking is dangerous because it closes a door. And once that door is closed, no new information can enter. Think about your own phone for a moment. If your phone never updates, it slowly becomes outdated, slow, and full of problems. The same thing happens to a mind that refuses to update itself. A truly smart person understands one simple truth. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. This is not weakness, this is wisdom. But a foolish person feels the opposite. The less they actually know, the more certain they feel about everything. There is even a name for this pattern. Psychologists call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with very little skill in something often believe they are experts because they don't know enough to see their own mistakes. Here is a simple example. Imagine 2 employees, Carlos and Sofia, both new to the same job. Carlos finishes his training and immediately feels like he knows everything. When his manager gives him advice, he thinks, "I already know this." He stops listening carefully. He stops asking questions. Sofia finishes the exact same training, but she keeps asking questions. She keeps watching how more experienced coworkers handle difficult situations. She assumes there is always more to learn. 1 year later, Sofia has grown into one of the best workers on the team. Carlos is still making the same beginner mistakes he made on his first day, because he stopped being open to learning a long time ago. So here is your first check. When someone gives you feedback, what is your first reaction? Do you defend yourself immediately? Or do you pause and ask, could this be true? That small pause is the difference between growth and staying stuck forever. There is one more layer to this sign worth understanding. Closed-mindedness often disguises itself as strength. People tell themselves, "I'm just staying true to who I am," when really, they're just avoiding the discomfort of admitting they were wrong about something. But truly strong people are the ones secure enough to say, "I was wrong. I learned something new." Weak thinking hides behind stubbornness. Strong thinking welcomes correction because it cares more about being right eventually than being right immediately. Sign 2. They blame everyone else for their problems. The second sign is this. A stupid person almost never looks at themselves. They look everywhere else instead. Something goes wrong at work. My boss doesn't understand me. A relationship fails. They were the problem, not me. A goal doesn't happen. I never had the right opportunities. Notice the pattern here. In every single story, someone else is always the villain, and they are always the innocent victim. Now, sometimes life really is unfair. Sometimes other people really do make mistakes that affect you. This is true, and nobody is denying it. But here is the important question. If the exact same problem keeps happening again and again, in different situations, with different people, is it really possible that everyone else is always wrong? At some point, the common factor in all these situations needs to be examined honestly. And in almost every repeating problem, that common factor is you. This is not about blaming yourself for everything. This is about taking enough responsibility to actually fix the problem, instead of just complaining about it forever. Because here is the truth. Blame feels comfortable in the moment, but blame keeps you completely powerless. If the problem is always someone else's fault, then you never have the power to change anything. You just have to wait for other people to change, which almost never happens. Let's look at two people, Elena and Marcus, who both lose their jobs around the same time. Elena spends months telling everyone how unfair her old company was, how her manager never appreciated her, how the whole system is broken. She feels like a victim, and honestly, some of what she says might even be true. Marcus also feels upset about losing his job. But after a few days, he asks himself a harder question. Is there anything I could have done differently? Anything I can improve for next time? He realizes he had stopped updating his skills years ago. He starts learning something new immediately. Elena is still telling the same story about her old job 2 years later. Marcus has moved into a better position because he stopped waiting for the world to apologize to him and started improving himself instead. Taking responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. It simply means you refuse to stay powerless. Here is a useful way to test yourself. The next time something goes wrong, notice your very first thought. If your first thought is always about what someone else did wrong, try adding one more question right after it. And is there anything I could have done differently here? You don't need to answer it out loud to anyone. Just answer it honestly to yourself. Sign 3. They react before they think. The third sign is this. A stupid person acts on their first emotion without ever pausing to think. Someone says something rude, and they shout back immediately. Something goes wrong, and they panic instantly. An opportunity appears, and they say yes or no in 2 seconds without considering the consequences. This might look like confidence from the outside, but it is actually the opposite. It is a complete lack of self-control. Here is something important to understand. Every human being feels strong emotions sometimes. Anger, fear, excitement, jealousy, these feelings are completely normal. The difference between a wise person and a foolish person is not the emotion itself, it's the gap between feeling the emotion and acting on it. A wise person feels anger and then pauses. They think, what is the smartest response here, not just the fastest one? A foolish person feels anger and immediately acts on it, often saying or doing something they deeply regret just minutes later. This single pattern, reacting instead of responding, has destroyed more relationships, more careers, and more opportunities than almost anything else in human history. Think about two coworkers, David and Amir, who both receive harsh criticism from their manager during the same meeting. David feels his face turn red immediately. He interrupts his manager and argues loudly in front of the whole team. Later, he feels embarrassed, and his manager remembers this moment for a long time. Amir feels exactly the same anger inside, but he stays quiet during the meeting. He takes a breath. Later that day, he calmly asks his manager for a private conversation and explains his perspective clearly. Same emotion, same situation, completely different outcome. Here is a simple practice you can use starting today. The next time you feel a strong emotion rising, before you speak or act, silently count to 5. Just 5 seconds. This tiny pause gives your thinking brain enough time to catch up with your emotional brain. And that 5-second pause has saved countless people from decisions they would have regretted for years. This same principle applies far beyond anger. It applies to sudden excitement too. Someone offers you an amazing opportunity, and your first instinct is to say yes immediately, without checking the details. Someone suggests spending a large amount of money, and your excitement makes the decision feel obvious in the moment. Pausing doesn't mean becoming slow or fearful. It simply means giving your complete mind, not just your emotional half, the chance to weigh in before you commit. Sign 4. They talk more than they listen. The fourth sign is this: a stupid person is always waiting for their turn to speak, instead of actually listening. Watch closely in any conversation, and you will notice something interesting. Some people listen only to respond. Other people listen to actually understand. These sound similar, but they are completely different. When someone is only listening to respond, their mind is already busy while the other person is still talking. They are preparing their next sentence, thinking about what they want to say next, waiting for a small pause so they can jump in. They might even interrupt, because in their mind, what they want to say feels more important than what the other person is currently saying. This habit quietly signals something important. It signals that this person believes their own thoughts matter more than anyone else's. But here is a powerful truth. You cannot learn anything new while you are talking. You can only learn while you are listening. Every piece of new information, every different perspective, every useful idea from someone else's experience, all of it can only enter your mind through listening, never through talking. So a person who talks constantly, who interrupts often, who rarely asks real questions about other people, is quietly cutting themselves off from an enormous amount of learning. Consider two people at a networking event, Julia and Peter. Julia talks about herself for almost the entire conversation, her achievements, her opinions, her plans. She barely asks the other person a single question. Peter, in the same kind of situation, asks genuine questions. What do you do? What's been challenging for you lately? What have you learned recently? And he actually listens to the answers. After the event, people remember Peter as interesting and easy to talk to. Nobody remembers much about Julia at all, except that she talked a lot. Ironically, the person who talked less learned more, connected more, and was remembered more positively. Here is a simple challenge. In your next conversation, try to ask more questions than you make statements. Notice how much you actually learn when your mouth is closed and your ears are open. This doesn't mean you should never share your own thoughts or experiences. Conversation is meant to go both ways. The problem is not speaking. The problem is speaking without ever truly listening first. A simple habit that helps enormously is this. Before responding to what someone said, silently repeat their main point back to yourself. If you can't do that clearly, it usually means you weren't fully listening in the first place. Sign 5. They repeat the same mistakes. The fifth sign is this. A stupid person makes the same mistake again and again without ever changing their approach. Making a mistake is not stupid. Everyone makes mistakes. This is a completely normal part of being human. But making the exact same mistake 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, while expecting a different result each time, this is a very different problem. There is a well-known saying that captures this perfectly. Doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different outcome is one of the clearest signs of foolish thinking. Think about someone who keeps starting relationships with the same type of person, gets hurt in the same way every time, and never stops to ask, "What pattern am I repeating here?" Think about someone who keeps spending more money than they earn, feels stressed about debt every single month, and never sits down to actually create a plan. Think about someone who keeps arriving late, keeps apologizing, keeps promising to change, but never actually adjusts their morning routine to prevent the problem in the first place. In every one of these situations, the mistake itself is not the biggest problem. The real problem is the refusal to learn from it. A wise person treats every mistake like useful information. This didn't work. What can I learn? What will I try differently next time? A foolish person treats every mistake like bad luck. This happened again. I guess this is just how my life is. Let's compare 2 students, Hannah and Leo, who both fail the same difficult exam. Hannah studies the exact same way for the retake. Same schedule, same method, same last-minute cramming the night before. She fails again. Leo sits down and honestly examines what went wrong the first time. He realizes he was memorizing information instead of truly understanding it. He changes his entire study method. He passes the retake with a much higher score. The difference wasn't intelligence. The difference was whether they were willing to actually learn from the first failure. So here is a useful question to ask yourself regularly. Is this the first time this problem has happened, or does this feel familiar? If it feels familiar, that's your signal to change your approach, not repeat it again. It also helps to write your mistakes down somewhere, instead of only thinking about them briefly and moving on. A short note, what happened, why it happened, what you'll try differently, turns a vague, uncomfortable memory into a clear lesson you can actually look back on. Over time, this simple habit builds something powerful. A personal record of exactly how you've grown and exactly which mistakes you've already learned not to repeat. Sign 6. They choose comfort over growth every single time. The 6th and final sign is this. A stupid person almost always chooses what feels easy right now over what would actually help them later. This shows up everywhere in daily life. Choosing to watch videos for 3 hours instead of working on a skill that could change your future. Choosing to avoid a difficult conversation even though avoiding it makes the problem grow bigger. Choosing junk food that feels good for 5 minutes instead of a healthy meal that helps you feel good for years. Choosing to stay in a job, a relationship, or a routine that clearly isn't working simply because change feels uncomfortable. None of these choices happen because a person lacks intelligence. They happen because the short-term feeling is more powerful in that exact moment than the long-term outcome. This is actually one of the most common patterns among people who struggle throughout their entire lives. Not a lack of knowledge, a consistent pattern of choosing the easy, comfortable option over and over again, even when they know exactly what the smarter choice would be. A wise person feels the same pull toward comfort that everyone feels, but they have trained themselves to ask one simple question before choosing. Will I be proud of this choice tomorrow, or will I regret it? Consider 2 friends, Noah and Ivy, who both want to improve their health. Noah knows exactly what he should do. Exercise regularly, eat better, sleep more. But every single day, in the actual moment of choosing, he picks the easier option. He tells himself, "I'll start tomorrow," for months. Ivy struggles with the exact same temptations, but she makes one small, uncomfortable choice each day: a short walk, one healthier meal, going to bed a little earlier. Not perfect, just slightly better than comfortable. 1 year later, Noah is exactly where he started, still planning to begin tomorrow. Ivy has built an entirely new, healthier lifestyle, one uncomfortable choice at a time. The gap between them was never intelligence. It was simply whether they were willing to choose short-term discomfort for long-term growth. It's worth saying clearly here that comfort itself is not the enemy. Rest, enjoyment, and relaxation are healthy and necessary. The problem only appears when comfort becomes the automatic default for every single decision, even the ones that clearly need something more from you. The goal isn't to eliminate comfort completely. The goal is to notice when you're choosing it out of genuine need, and when you're choosing it simply because growth feels a little uncomfortable right now. Before we bring everything together, there's one more thing worth mentioning, because it might be the most important part of this entire video. None of these 6 signs happen suddenly. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, "Today, I will stop listening to feedback forever." Nobody plans to repeat the same mistake for the 10th time. These patterns build slowly, quietly, one small choice at a time, until one day they simply feel normal. This is exactly why they're so dangerous. A big, obvious mistake is easy to notice and easy to fix, but a small pattern, repeated for years without anyone questioning it, becomes almost invisible. It starts to feel like personality. It starts to feel like just who I am. But here is something important to remember. A pattern you weren't born with is not permanent just because it's old. It became a habit through repetition. And anything built through repetition can also be rebuilt through repetition in a new direction. This is genuinely good news. It means none of these 6 signs are permanent labels. They are simply patterns. Patterns that were learned, and patterns that can be unlearned, starting with one honest moment of noticing. Let's look at these 6 signs together, because none of them exist alone. They connect and reinforce each other. Sign 1 showed you that thinking you already know everything closes the door to learning. Sign 2 showed you that blaming others keeps you powerless, even when some of your problems really were caused by others. Sign 3 showed you that reacting instantly, without pausing, leads to decisions you often regret. Sign 4 showed you that talking more than listening quietly cuts you off from learning anything new. Sign 5 showed you that repeating the same mistakes without adjusting guarantees you the same painful results. And sign 6 showed you that consistently choosing comfort over growth slowly builds a life you never actually wanted. Here is the most important thing to understand about all 6 of these signs. Every single person on Earth has shown one or more of these patterns at some point in their life. This includes wise, successful, intelligent people too. The real difference is not whether these patterns ever appear. The real difference is how quickly a person notices the pattern and how honestly they're willing to work on changing it. This honesty is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is exactly why so few people ever do it. It's much easier to watch a video like this one and think about someone else who really needs to hear this. It takes real courage to instead think quietly, which of these am I actually guilty of? That single moment of honest self-reflection is worth more than years of pointing out other people's flaws. So here is a simple challenge for you. Think honestly about these 6 signs. Which one shows up most often in your own life? Maybe you interrupt people more than you'd like to admit. Maybe you've been repeating the same mistake in your relationships for years. Maybe you've been choosing comfort over growth so consistently that it's become invisible to you. Whatever it is, don't feel ashamed. Feel grateful, because now you can finally see it clearly. And once you can see a pattern clearly, you already have everything you need to start changing it. There is one final idea worth carrying with you. Being wise is not a fixed destination that some people reach and others never do. It's not a title you earn once and keep forever. Wisdom is a daily practice, a series of small, honest choices, repeated again and again, in the direction of clearer thinking. Some days you'll catch yourself reacting too fast. Some days you'll notice you talked more than you listened. That's normal. The goal was never to be perfect at all 6 of these. The goal is simply to notice a little more often and adjust a little more quickly than you did the day before. That is the end of today's 6 signs. While you were listening, your mind was quietly checking itself against each pattern. Honestly, maybe uncomfortably at times. That discomfort is a good sign. It means something in you is already growing. And at the same time, your ears were absorbing clear, natural English, simple words, connected sentences, real ideas you can understand and reuse in your own daily life. Before you go, ask yourself one final question. Which of these 6 signs do you want to work on first? Write it down. Say it out loud. And starting today, choose one small action that moves you in the opposite direction of that pattern. If this video helped you see something honestly about yourself, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Leave a comment and tell us, which sign did you recognize most in your own life? And subscribe, because every day we bring you more honest lessons, more motivation, and more simple English to help you grow, one video at a time. See you in the next video. Stay humble, stay honest with yourself, and keep growing, one small choice at a time.